The morning air on Ethros carried the sweet scent of crystal flowers and the gentle hum of floating gardens. Professor Trill adjusted her translucent wings as she reviewed the incoming student files for the 100th time. Something was terribly wrong with the translation software. It had to be. According to the documents, a student from something called Earth would be joining Zenith Academy next week. The planet was classified as a class Tatooine Deathworld, which was impossible. No intelligent life could evolve on such a hostile environment. The atmospheric pressure alone would crush most known species, and the gravity readings were so extreme that Trill wondered if someone had added extra zeros by mistake. Surely this is an error, she whispered to herself, her delicate antennae twitching with worry. The Academy prided itself on educating the most refined and intellectually gifted species in the galaxy. Their current students included the crystalline Vithrak, who communicated through beautiful harmonic resonances, the gaseous Nebulon, who existed as sentient clouds of organized particles, and the graceful Chirik, whose gossamer wings and compound eyes made them the poets of the insect kingdom. Director Shimmer, an elderly Vithrak whose crystal body reflected centuries of accumulated wisdom, called an emergency faculty meeting. His usual calm demeanor showed cracks of concern as he addressed the gathered teachers. The Galactic Education Council has confirmed the exchange student from Earth will arrive as scheduled, he announced, his voice creating soft chimes in the air. We must prepare for what they call a human. The faculty exchanged worried glances. Professor Whisper, a nebulon whose form shifted between purple and blue clouds, condensed nervously. Director, surely no being could survive the conditions described in these files. Liquid water covering most of the planet's surface, atmospheric storms that can level entire forests, and the native life forms they describe sound like monsters from children's nightmares. Lions, sharks, and bears, read Professor Flutter, a Chirik whose compound eyes scanned the datapad with growing horror. These creatures have teeth designed for tearing flesh and claws that can rip through solid matter. How does any species survive alongside such beasts? Trill found herself studying the physical description of the incoming student. According to the files, humans possessed dense calcium-based internal support structures they called bones, muscular systems capable of generating tremendous force, and sensory organs that functioned in a range of conditions that would be fatal to most civilized species. The document mentioned that humans regularly exposed themselves to direct stellar radiation for recreation and could survive temperature variations that would require emergency life support for Academy students. Perhaps, suggested Director Shimmer. Hopefully, this human has been specially modified for our environment. Surely their species would not send an unprotected individual to our peaceful world. The preparations began immediately. The Academy's medical bay was expanded with equipment designed to handle unknown physiological needs. The dormitory received atmospheric adjustments and gravitational dampeners to create what the files suggested might be comfortable conditions for the newcomer. Most concerning of all, they had to figure out how to integrate this mysterious student into their carefully structured educational programs. What about physical education? Asked Trill, reviewing the human's course requirements. The Council insists all exchange students participate in our wellness programs. This created a new problem. Physical education at Zenith Academy was designed for beings whose idea of strenuous activity involved gentle movements and careful breathing exercises. The Vithrak students practiced crystal harmonics that required precise positioning and delicate vibrations. The Nebulon engaged in atmospheric density exercises that involved careful particle alignment. The Chirik performed wing-stretching routines that resembled beautiful dances more than what other species might consider physical training. Professor Gentle Breeze, the Academy's physical wellness instructor, examined the human's file with growing bewilderment. It says here that humans engage in something called sports for entertainment. Listen to this description. Players attempt to carry an inflated leather sphere across a designated area while other players attempt to physically prevent this action through bodily contact. This sounds like ritualized combat. The file contained other disturbing references to human recreational activities. Swimming involved deliberately entering large bodies of water and propelling oneself through liquid using coordinated limb movements. Running was described as rapid bipedal locomotion maintained over extended distances. Most horrifying of all was something called weightlifting, which apparently involved repeatedly raising and lowering heavy objects for no practical purpose other than personal satisfaction. "How do they survive these activities?" whispered Professor Flutter, her delicate wings trembling. "The energy expenditure alone would be fatal to most species." As the day of arrival approached, the academy buzzed with nervous excitement. Students gathered in small groups, sharing theories about what this mysterious human might look like. The Vithrak students created harmonic compositions expressing their anxiety, filling the halls with crystalline melodies of concern. The Nebulon formed discussion clouds, their gaseous form swirling with speculation. The Chirrut wrote poetry about the coming of the strange visitor from the Deathworld. The most popular theory was that humans must be some kind of mechanical constructs, perhaps robots designed to explore hostile environments. This would explain their ability to survive, conditions that would destroy organic life. Others suggested that the files were elaborate fiction, part of some kind of interspecies entertainment program. Alex Thompson stepped off the transport shuttle with a backpack slung over his shoulder and a smile on his face. He looked around at the beautiful crystal spires and floating gardens of Zenith Academy, completely unaware that his mere existence was causing a crisis of understanding among the faculty and students watching from hidden observation points. To Alex, this was the opportunity of a lifetime. He was the first human selected for the Galactic Education Council's exchange program, and he intended to make the most of it. He had spent months studying alien cultures and languages, preparing for what he hoped would be an incredible adventure among the stars. He had no idea that simply walking across the landing pad in normal Earth gravity, breathing the standard atmosphere without assistance, and carrying his own luggage had just shattered the worldview of everyone watching. The aliens observed in stunned silence as this supposedly fragile being from a death world moved with casual confidence through conditions they considered mildly challenging, even with their advanced life support systems. The real shock was yet to come. The Academy's main gymnasium felt like a cathedral of gentle wellness. Soft bioluminescent panels provided soothing light that changed color with the students' moods, while the air carried the faint scent of healing minerals. Alex stood at the entrance, trying not to look too eager as he waited for his first physical education class to begin. Around him, the other students moved with the careful precision of beings who understood that their bodies were delicate works of art. The Vithrak students positioned themselves with mathematical accuracy, their crystal forms creating perfect geometric patterns across the cushioned floor. Each movement produced soft musical tones, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. The Nebulon students were barely visible as coherent beings, their gaseous forms shifting between states of matter as they prepared for class. Alex watched in fascination as they seemed to communicate by changing the density and color of their cloud-like bodies, creating patterns that reminded him of slow-motion fireworks. The Chirrut students were perhaps the most beautiful to watch. Their gossamer wings caught the changing light as they performed what looked like a cross between yoga and ballet, each movement so graceful that Alex felt clumsy, just standing still. Their compound eyes reflected the room's soft illumination like tiny rainbows, and when they moved, it was with the fluid precision of dancers who had never known the weight of real gravity. Professor Gentlebreeze glided into the gymnasium. Her Nebulon formed a shifting mass of pale green particles that sparkled with inner light. Her voice was like a whisper of wind through leaves, somehow heard by everyone despite having no apparent source. "Welcome, students, to another session of harmonious wellness," she began, her form condensing slightly to show attention. Today, we will practice the ancient art of peaceful movement meditation. We shall begin with the traditional breathing of serenity. Alex raised his hand politely. Excuse me, Professor. When do we start the warm-up exercises? The gymnasium fell silent. Every student turned to stare at the human. Their various forms of attention focused on him with the intensity of beings who had just heard something impossible. Professor Gentle Breeze's particles swirled in what Alex would later learn was the nebulon equivalent of nervous confusion. Warm-up exercises? She repeated, the words creating tiny eddies in her gaseous form. I'm afraid I don't understand that term. Alex looked around at the other students, realizing he might have made some kind of cultural mistake. You know, like jogging in place, jumping jacks, push-ups, just to get the blood flowing before the real workout? 3 Chirrux students immediately collapsed onto their cushioned resting platforms, their delicate nervous systems overwhelmed by the casual mention of activities that sounded like forms of ritualized self-destruction. A cluster of Vithrak students began producing discordant chimes, their crystal structures resonating with harmonics of pure terror. Perhaps, suggested Professor Gentle Breeze carefully, you could demonstrate what humans consider preparation for physical activity, but please move very slowly and stop immediately if you feel any discomfort. Alex shrugged, thinking this was just a cultural exchange thing. These aliens probably had different ways of exercising, and he wanted to be respectful. Sure, I'll show you some basic stuff. This is pretty much what we did in middle school. He started with what he considered the most gentle warm-up possible, beginning with arm circles. The simple rotation of his shoulders and arms created a soft whooshing sound in the air, and Alex noticed that several students had backed away from him as if he were performing some kind of dangerous ritual. As you can see, he explained cheerfully, this helps loosen up the shoulder joints and gets the blood circulation going. He moved into gentle neck rolls, completely unaware that the watching aliens were recording what they believed might be the final moments of a being about to accidentally terminate itself through excessive physical stress. When Alex dropped to the floor to demonstrate push-ups, the reaction was immediate and catastrophic. 2 Nebulan students lost cohesion entirely, their particle forms scattering across the room in panic. A Vithrak student named Crystal Song produced such a sharp note of alarm that it cracked one of the gymnasium's decorative mineral formations. "Stop!" cried Professor Gentle Breeze, her form turning a deep red color that indicated extreme distress. "Please, stop before you injure yourself." Alex paused mid-push-up, looking up in confusion. "I'm fine, Professor. This is really basic stuff. I usually do like 50 of these before I even start my real workout." The number 50 hit the alien students like a physical blow. In their understanding, any repetitive physical action performed more than 3 or 4 times would result in immediate muscular failure and possibly death. The concept of 50 repetitions of anything was beyond their comprehension. 50? Whispered a Chirrux student named Wing Dancer, her compound eyes wide with horror. 50 times you perform this crushing of your body structure against the solid surface? Alex stood up, brushing dust off his hands, and realized he had seriously misunderstood the situation. These beings weren't just different from humans. They were physically incapable of the kind of activity that Alex considered normal recreational movement. "Look, maybe I should just show you some stretching instead," he offered, trying to be helpful. "That's really gentle stuff." He reached down to touch his toes, a movement so simple that he didn't even think about it. The sound of his spine articulating, as he bent forward, created a series of soft pops that the alien students interpreted as the sound of his skeletal structure failing under stress. A Vithrak student named Harmony Keeper actually fainted, her crystal form hitting the cushioned floor, with a musical crash that sounded like a broken wind chime. 3 more Chirrux students began hyperventilating, their delicate respiratory systems unable to cope with the stress of watching what they believed was a suicide attempt. Professor Gentle Breeze was now a swirling vortex of alarmed particles, her usual gentle green color cycling rapidly through shades of red and orange that indicated maximum distress. "Medical team to gymnasium. Emergency. We have a student in severe physical distress." Alex straightened up quickly, concerned by the professor's reaction. "I'm fine. Really, I'm not hurt at all. This is just normal human flexibility." Normal? The word came out as a strangled whisper from a dozen different species simultaneously. The idea that the terrifying physical contortions they had just witnessed were considered routine for humans was more than their understanding could process. Within minutes, the gymnasium was filled with medical personnel, emergency response teams, and several faculty members who had never seen a human before. They surrounded Alex with instruments designed to detect everything from internal hemorrhaging to skeletal fractures, completely unable to believe that he was uninjured. Dr. Crystal Healer, the Academy's head of medical services, ran her diagnostic equipment over Alex's body while muttering in amazement. "Impossible. The readings show no tissue damage, no stress indicators, no signs of imminent systemic failure. How is this being still functional?" Alex looked around at the crowd of concerned aliens and finally began to understand the magnitude of the cultural gap he had stumbled into. These beings weren't just physically different from humans, they existed in a completely different universe of physical possibility. What he considered basic movement was, to them, a demonstration of impossible endurance and strength. The gymnasium had become ground zero for the first major interspecies incident in Academy history, and Alex Thompson, a perfectly ordinary 16-year-old human, had caused it all by trying to do a push-up. The Academy's Emergency Council convened in the Crystal Chamber, a room designed for the most serious discussions in the institution's history. Director Shimmer's usually calm crystal structure flickered with stress patterns as he reviewed the medical reports from Alex's first PE class incident. Around the curved table sat representatives from every major species in the Academy, their various forms of agitation creating a symphony of concern. The human claims he was merely demonstrating basic physical preparation, reported Dr. Crystal Healer, her diagnostic equipment still running analysis on the impossible readings she had taken. According to his vital signs, he was under no physical stress whatsoever during activities that should have hospitalized our strongest students. Professor, Gentle Breeze maintained her usual gaseous form, but her colors kept shifting to patterns that indicated deep confusion. "Council members, I have taught physical wellness for 30 galactic standard years. I have never seen anything like this. The human performed movements that defied every principle of safe bodily function." "Perhaps," suggested Professor Flutter. "Hopefully, the human was artificially enhanced? Some kind of mechanical augmentation that allows impossible feats?" Director Shimmer's crystal chimed softly as he accessed the human's medical data. "All scans indicate purely organic structure. No technological enhancements, no artificial modifications. This appears to be the baseline physical capability of his species." The implications hung in the air like a storm cloud. If Alex represented normal human physical ability, then everything they understood about the limitations of organic life needed to be reconsidered. "We need a controlled demonstration," declared Council Member Deep Thought, an ancient Vithrak whose crystal had witnessed centuries of Academy history. "Under proper medical supervision, with safety protocols, we must understand what we are dealing with." Alex found himself standing in the Academy's largest gymnasium, now converted into something resembling a research facility. Medical monitors surrounded the exercise area, scanning devices pointed at him from every angle, and trauma counselors stood ready to assist the observing students who might be psychologically damaged by what they were about to witness. The entire student body had been given the option to attend, with the understanding that viewing might be disturbing. Despite the warnings, nearly every student had chosen to watch from the safety of the observation gallery, protected by reinforced transparent barriers designed to contain explosive decompression events. "Alex Thompson of Earth," announced Director Shimmer formally, "The Academy requests a demonstration of standard human physical capabilities. Please proceed at your own pace, stopping immediately if you experience any discomfort." Alex looked around at the elaborate setup and felt slightly overwhelmed. He had never been the center of attention like this, and the solemn atmosphere made him nervous. Okay. I guess I'll just show you some normal stuff we do in gym class back home." He started with what he considered the absolute basics, beginning with a light jog around the gymnasium's perimeter. The sound of his feet hitting the floor created a rhythmic percussion that the aliens found both mesmerizing and terrifying. To beings whose fastest movement was a gentle glide, Alex's steady pace looked like an emergency evacuation drill. "Current velocity, 15 kilometers per hour, reported a monitoring technician, his voice filled with disbelief. "Sustained over 8 minutes with no signs of fatigue or respiratory distress." In the observation gallery, a group of Chirruk students had begun composing what they called the Ballad of the Running Deathworlder, treating Alex's casual jog as an epic feat worthy of musical commemoration. Several Nebulon students had condensed into tighter formations, a defensive behavior they exhibited when confronted with incomprehensible phenomena. Alex moved on to jumping jacks, explaining cheerfully, "This is good for getting your heart rate up and working multiple muscle groups at the same time." The sight of a human launching himself repeatedly into the air while coordinating complex limb movements created a cascade of fainting among the more delicate observers. "The human appears to be defying local gravitational fields," whispered Dr. Deep Scan, a Vithrak researcher whose instruments were recording data that challenged several laws of physics. "How is he generating sufficient force to achieve repeated vertical displacement?" When Alex transitioned to push-ups, the medical monitors began producing readings that the technicians initially dismissed as equipment malfunction. His heart rate remained steady, his breathing controlled, and his muscle tissues showed no signs of the microscopic tears that should have resulted from such extreme exertion. "I usually do about 100 of these in my morning routine," Alex commented casually, not noticing that his words had caused 3 medical technicians to faint and a Nebulon professor to lose atmospheric cohesion entirely. The breaking point came when Alex decided to demonstrate what he called basic strength training. The Academy's exercise equipment had been designed for beings whose maximum lifting capacity was measured in grams, not kilograms. Looking around at the delicate apparatus, Alex spotted a structural support beam that looked sturdy enough for his purposes. "Back home, we use barbells for this, but I guess this will work," he said, gripping the beam with both hands. It was part of the gymnasium's architectural framework designed to support the building's crystal ceiling structures. To Alex, it looked like it weighed about 200 pounds, perfect for a moderate lifting demonstration. The beam was actually a load-bearing support that held up half the gymnasium's roof. Alex lifted it. The sound of the entire building's structural system recalculating its load distribution created a harmonic resonance that every Vithrak in the Academy felt in their crystal cores. Emergency alarms began sounding as the gymnasium's safety systems detected what they interpreted as a catastrophic structural failure in progress. "Impossible," breathed Director Shimmer, his usually steady crystal form flickering rapidly. "The structural integrity sensors indicate that support beam carries a load of 12,000 standard weight units." Alex, completely unaware that he was holding up part of the building, performed 10 careful repetitions of what he considered a moderate deadlift. Each time he lifted the beam, the entire gymnasium rose slightly. Each time he lowered it, the building settled back into its foundation with a gentle thud that registered on seismic equipment across the campus. "I can usually do more reps than this," Alex apologized, carefully setting the beam back in its original position, "but I don't want to overdo it on the first day." The observation gallery had become a medical emergency zone. Students from every species were experiencing various forms of psychological shock, cultural vertigo, and existential crisis. The Chirruk students had stopped composing poetry too overwhelmed to find words for what they had witnessed. The nebulon had formed a single, confused cloud of shared bewilderment. The Vithrak were producing random harmonic frequencies, their usual musical communication broken down into chaos. Dr. Crystal Healer approached Alex with her medical scanner, her crystalline hands shaking as she recorded his vital signs. Heart rate, slightly elevated but within normal range. Respiration, steady and controlled. Muscle tissue, no signs of damage or fatigue. Brain activity, consistent with mild satisfaction. Yeah, that felt pretty good, Alex agreed, rolling his shoulders to work out a slight stiffness. Thanks for letting me show you guys some human exercises. Maybe next time I can demonstrate some cardio workouts or martial arts forms. The mention of martial arts caused Director Shimmer's crystal structure to crack audibly. The idea that humans had developed combat applications of their impossible physical capabilities was more than the Academy's emergency protocols were designed to handle. In the observation gallery, Professor Flutter began composing an urgent message. To the Galactic Education Council. Recommend immediate reclassification of human species. Suggested new category, benevolent impossibility. Request guidance on how to continue educational programs with beings who accidentally perform architectural miracles during routine exercise. The recording of Alex's gymnasium demonstration spread across the galactic network faster than a supernova shockwave. Within hours, the file had been downloaded by educational institutions, research facilities, and military academies on thousands of worlds. The title, translated into every known language, became universally recognized. Human Physical Education, a Study in Impossible Biology. Dr. Zenobius arrived on the morning transport from the Galactic Research Institute, followed by a team of specialists whose entire careers had been built on understanding the limits of organic life. They set up equipment in the Academy's medical bay that could analyze biological functions down to the quantum level, convinced they would find some explanation for what they had witnessed. There must be something we are missing, Dr. Zenobius muttered as he reviewed Alex's cellular scans for the 100th time. No carbon-based life form should be capable of generating this much mechanical force without immediate system failure. Meanwhile, Alex had become an accidental celebrity. Students from other species would gather in small groups whenever he walked across campus, whispering among themselves and occasionally asking for his autograph. The Chirrut students had begun wearing small crystal pendants shaped like barbells, while some of the Vithrak had modified their harmonic frequencies to create compositions inspired by the rhythm of human footsteps. The Academy's administration faced a unique problem. How do you integrate a student whose basic physical functions constitute a safety hazard for everyone around him? Director Shimmer called another emergency meeting, this time including representatives from the Galactic Education Council, via holographic link. The human appears to be adapting well to our academic programs, reported Professor Mindweaver, who taught Alex's xenobiology courses. His intellectual capabilities are within normal parameters for his species. The problem is entirely physical. Counselor, deep space flickered into holographic clarity, her ancient Vithrak form creating harmonics of concern. Have you attempted to modify the Academy's physical education programs to accommodate the human's unique requirements? That's just it, replied Professor Gentlebreeze, her gaseous form shifting colors rapidly. We have no idea what his requirements actually are. Everything we consider physically demanding, he treats as gentle relaxation. Everything he considers basic exercise would hospitalize our students. Alex himself had been trying to solve the problem from his end. He had started doing his daily workout routine in his dormitory room, using his furniture as improvised exercise equipment. This had resulted in several noise complaints from students in neighboring rooms who thought his push-up routine was some kind of construction work being performed at inappropriate hours. Maybe I could teach some of the other students modified versions of human exercises, Alex suggested during a meeting with the faculty. Like, really gentle versions that won't hurt anyone. The faculty exchanged glances that Alex was beginning to recognize as the alien equivalent of nervous laughter. The idea of gentle human exercises was like the concept of mild stellar radiation or comfortable event horizons. What would you consider the absolute most gentle form of human physical activity? Asked Dr. Crystal Healer carefully. Alex thought about it seriously. Well, walking is pretty basic. Maybe some light stretching. Oh, and breathing exercises are super gentle. Professor Gentle Breeze condensed into a tighter formation, her equivalent of leaning forward with interest. Tell us about human breathing exercises. Sure, Alex said cheerfully. You take a deep breath in through your nose, hold it for a few seconds, then exhale slowly through your mouth. It helps with relaxation and circulation. He demonstrated, taking what he considered a normal deep breath. The expansion of his chest cavity and the sound of air moving through his respiratory system created a low rumbling that the aliens found both fascinating and slightly terrifying. When he exhaled, the controlled release of air created a gentle breeze that stirred the delicate crystal formations on the nearest table. Fascinating, whispered Dr. Zenobius, his instruments recording data at maximum capacity. The human's lung capacity is approximately 15 times larger than any previously documented intelligent species. The air displacement alone could power our atmospheric recycling systems for hours. Word of Alex's gentle human movement classes spread quickly. What started as an attempt to solve his integration problem became the most popular optional course. In academy history, students signed up in record numbers, driven by curiosity and the bragging rights that came with surviving exposure to human physical capabilities. The first class took place in the Academy's largest auditorium, with medical teams standing by and emergency evacuation procedures clearly posted. Alex stood before an audience of nearly 200 alien students, feeling more nervous than he had during his original demonstration. Okay, everyone, he began. We're going to start with the most basic human movement there is, walking. He took a single step forward, his foot contacting the floor with what he considered barely any force at all. To the watching aliens, the sound was like a gentle drum beat, rhythmic and somehow hypnotic. Several Chirrut students began swaying slightly, their natural instincts responding to the percussion of human locomotion. Now, the key to walking, Alex explained, taking another step, is maintaining balance while shifting your weight from one foot to the other. Humans do this automatically, but for other species it might take some practice. A brave Vethrak student named Cleartone raised a crystalline appendage. Human Alex, could you demonstrate the most extreme form of human walking? Alex grinned. You mean running? Sure, I can show you a light jog. The word light had lost all meaning in the context of human physical activity. When Alex began what he considered a gentle jogging pace around the auditorium, the assembled students watched, in awe as he maintained a steady rhythm that would have been their emergency evacuation speed. But something unexpected happened. Instead of terror, the students began to feel something else, the rhythmic sound of Alex's footsteps, the controlled breathing, the fluid movement of his limbs. It was creating a kind of harmony that spoke to something deep in their various forms of consciousness. A Nebulon student named Drift Current tentatively began pulsing his gaseous form in time with Alex's steps. A group of Chirrut students started humming a melody that matched the rhythm of human locomotion. Even some of the Vithrak began producing harmonic resonances that turned Alex's simple jog into the centerpiece of an impromptu musical composition. By the end of the class, something had shifted in the Academy's understanding of their human student. Alex wasn't just a biological anomaly or a walking physics violation. He was a different kind of intelligence, one that expressed itself through physical capability in the same way that their species expressed themselves through music, mathematics, or atmospheric manipulation. Professor Gentle Breeze approached Alex after the class, her gaseous form cycling through colors that indicated deep thought. Human Alex, I believe I am beginning to understand. Your species uses physical movement as a form of communication, does it not? Alex considered this. I never thought about it that way, but yeah, I guess so. Sports, dancing, even just the way someone walks can tell you a lot about how they're feeling. Then perhaps, she suggested, we have been approaching this incorrectly. Instead of trying to protect our students from human physical capabilities, we should be learning to appreciate them as another form of art. The news reports that evening carried a different tone than the sensational coverage of the previous days. Instead of Deathworlder terrorizes Academy, the headlines read, Human student inspires new understanding of physical expression, and alien students discover beauty in human movement. Alex went to sleep that night knowing that he had accomplished something important, even if he wasn't entirely sure what it was. Outside his dormitory window, he could hear the gentle sounds of Chirix students practicing their own version of walking meditation, and the harmonic resonances of Vithrak students composing new melodies inspired by the rhythm of human heartbeats. 3 months had passed since Alex's arrival at Zenith Academy, and the campus had transformed in ways no one could have predicted. What had begun as a cultural crisis had evolved into the most successful interspecies integration program in galactic history. The Academy's halls now echoed with sounds that would have been unimaginable before. The gentle percussion of modified human exercises, harmonic compositions inspired by breathing patterns, and the excited chatter of students discussing their latest achievements in cross-species fitness. Alex walked through the crystalline gardens where Vithrak students were practicing something they called movement harmonics. They had learned to coordinate their natural crystal resonances with carefully controlled physical positioning, creating melodies that incorporated elements of human rhythm. The sight of these graceful beings attempting what they considered extreme physical choreography still made Alex smile, especially when he remembered that their extreme movements involved raising one appendage slightly higher than usual. Human. "Alex!" called Crystal Singer Melody, her crystalline form glowing with excitement. "Watch this!" She performed what the Vithrak now called a thunder movement, which was essentially a very gentle step forward combined with a slight arm extension. To human eyes, it looked like a barely perceptible shift in position. To her fellow Vithrak, it was a display of physical prowess that bordered on the superhuman. "That's amazing, Melody," Alex encouraged, genuinely impressed by her progress. "You're really getting the hang of dynamic movement." In the Academy's redesigned gymnasium, Professor Gentle Breeze was leading a class in human-inspired atmospheric conditioning. The Nebulan students were learning to manipulate their gaseous forms in patterns that mimicked human breathing exercises, creating beautiful swirling displays of colored particles that pulsed in rhythm with imaginary heartbeats. "Remember," Professor Gentle Breeze instructed her students, "the key is controlled circulation, just as human Alex demonstrated. Feel the energy moving through your particle matrix." One student, a young Nebulan named Soft Rain, had become particularly skilled at this new form of exercise. Her gaseous form created intricate patterns that resembled the movement of human lungs, expanding and contracting in a display that was both beautiful and surprisingly calming to watch. The real breakthrough had come when the students began sharing their own unique abilities with Alex. He had always known that his alien classmates were intelligent, but he had underestimated just how extraordinary their capabilities truly were. In Dr. Crystal Healer's advanced biology class, Alex watched in amazement as Wing Dancer, a Chirix student, demonstrated her species' natural ability to perceive quantum fluctuations. Her compound eyes could detect subatomic particles in ways that human technology could barely match, allowing her to see the fundamental structure of matter itself. "Your turn, Alex," Wing Dancer said gently. "Show us how humans process multiple sensory inputs simultaneously." Alex had never thought of his normal sensory experience as remarkable, but to his alien classmates, his ability to coordinate sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell into a single coherent understanding of his environment was as impressive as his physical strength. When he described how humans could track multiple moving objects while maintaining balance and processing complex spatial relationships, the alien students listened with the same awe they had once reserved for his push-up demonstrations. The most profound moment came during a joint problem-solving exercise. The class was tasked with analyzing a complex stellar phenomenon that required multiple types of expertise. The Vithrak students used their crystal matrices to perform mathematical calculations that would have taken human computers hours to complete. The Nebulon used their particle manipulation abilities to create three-dimensional models of gravitational fields. The Chirrut employed their quantum sensitivity to detect energy patterns invisible to most instruments. Alex contributed by physically manipulating the equipment, making precise adjustments that required the kind of fine motor control and spatial reasoning that humans took for granted. But more importantly, he served as a coordinator, using his species' natural ability to synthesize information from multiple sources and communicate effectively between different types of intelligence. "The gravitational anomaly is located here," announced Clear Tone, her crystal calculations creating a precise mathematical model. "The particle density suggests a collapsed star remnant," added Drift Current, his gaseous form displaying a swirling representation of the stellar object. "I'm detecting quantum signatures consistent with exotic matter," reported Wing Dancer, her compound eyes tracking invisible energy patterns. Alex studied all three analyses, his human brain naturally combining the different types of data into a coherent picture. "So, we're looking at a neutron star with an unusual magnetic field that's interacting with dark matter particles. The mathematical model shows the gravitational effects, the particle analysis reveals the composition, and the quantum readings indicate why it's behaving differently than predicted." The solution was so elegant, so obviously correct once stated, that everyone in the class fell silent for a moment. They had just witnessed something remarkable, not just interspecies cooperation, but the emergence of a new kind of intelligence that was greater than the sum of its parts. Director Shimmer had been observing the exercise from the back of the classroom. His crystal form glowing with what Alex had learned was the Vithrak equivalent of pride. "This," he announced to the class, "is why the Academy exists. Not to separate different forms of intelligence, but to bring them together in harmony." The semester's end brought the Academy's first annual Interspecies Appreciation Festival, an event that had been hastily organized to celebrate what everyone was calling the human integration success. The festival featured demonstrations from every species, showing off their unique capabilities in ways that encouraged understanding rather than competition. Alex found himself standing in the main auditorium, preparing for what the organizers had called his cultural demonstration. He had initially planned to show some basic human sports, but after months of learning about his classmates' incredible abilities, he wanted to do something more meaningful. "Friends," he began, addressing an audience that included students, faculty, and dignitaries from across the galaxy. "When I first came to Zenith Academy, I thought I was here to learn about alien cultures. I didn't realize that I would also learn about myself." He gestured to his classmates in the front row. "Melody taught me that mathematics can be music. Drift Current showed me that thought itself can be art. Wing Dancer helped me understand that there are entire universes of perception beyond human senses." Alex picked up a simple metal bar, one of the props that had been provided for his demonstration. "This is just a piece of metal to most humans, but Melody can tell you its exact molecular composition by listening to its harmonic frequency. Drift Current can analyze its atomic structure by sensing how it affects particle flow around it. Wing Dancer can see the quantum forces that hold its electrons in orbit." He lifted the bar above his head, not as a display of strength, but as a symbol. "What makes humans special isn't that we're strong or fast or tough. What makes us special is the same thing that makes all of you special. We're different. And when different kinds of intelligence work together, we can understand things that none of us could figure out alone. The demonstration that followed was unlike anything in the Academy's history. Alex performed a carefully choreographed routine that incorporated elements from every species' movement traditions. He moved with the mathematical precision of Vithrak crystal harmonics, flowed like a nebulon atmospheric dance, and incorporated the graceful precision of chiric wing movements. But the most remarkable part was the music. His alien classmates had composed a piece that combined crystal harmonics, atmospheric resonance, and quantum frequency modulation, all timed to match the rhythm of human movement. As Alex performed his routine, the entire auditorium filled with a symphony that represented the merger of 4 different forms of consciousness into something entirely new. When it ended, the silence lasted for nearly a full minute. Then Crystal Singer Melody began a slow, deep harmonic that was picked up by every Vithrak in the audience. The Nebulan students created swirling patterns of colored particles that danced in the air. The Chiric students hummed melodies that complemented the crystal harmonics perfectly. And Alex, standing in the center of it all, realized that he was no longer just a human among aliens. He was part of something larger, something that had never existed before in the galaxy's history, a truly integrated interspecies community. Later that evening, as Alex prepared to return to Earth for the summer break, Director Shimmer approached him with a special assignment. "The Galactic Education Council has asked me to offer you a position," he said, his crystal form chiming, with formal ceremony. "They want you to become the galaxy's first interspecies physical culture ambassador." Alex looked out the window of his dormitory at the campus, where he had spent the most important months of his life. Alien students were walking through the crystal gardens, many of them practicing the gentle movement exercises he had taught them. In the distance, he could see the lights of the gymnasium where Professor Gentlebreeze was leading an evening session of human-inspired meditation. "What would that involve?" he asked. "Traveling to academies and research stations across the galaxy," Director Shimmer explained. "Teaching other species about human physical capabilities, but more importantly, helping them understand that different doesn't mean inferior or superior, just different." Alex smiled, thinking about all the alien students who were still afraid to try a simple jumping jack, and all the human students back on Earth who had no idea that intelligence could take the form of living crystals or sentient gas clouds. "I'll do it," he said, "but I have one condition." "What's that?" "I want to bring some of my classmates with me. Melody, Drift Current, and Wing Dancer. If I'm going to teach the galaxy about humans, they should teach the galaxy about their species, too." Director Shimmer's crystal structure flared with brilliant light, the Vithrak equivalent of delighted laughter. "Human Alex, that is the most intelligent thing anyone has said in this Academy's entire history." 6 months later, the first interspecies cultural exchange team departed from Zenith Academy aboard a specially modified transport ship. Alex Thompson, the human who had accidentally revolutionized galactic education by doing a push-up, was finally heading home to Earth. But he wasn't going alone. With him traveled 3 alien ambassadors who were just as eager to show the galaxy that intelligence came in forms beyond their wildest imagination. Together, they were going to teach the universe that the most remarkable thing about any species wasn't what made them strong or smart or special. It was what made them different. And in a galaxy full of different kinds of intelligence, that was the most valuable lesson of all.